Welcome to this Part 2 edition of Burning Earth Radio. This is your host, Gerard Spring, coming to you from the north. So if you haven't checked out Part 1, I highly recommend starting there so that this one will make a lot more sense. So on becoming plugged back into society, coming from nature to society, one of the things that I also really notice is just the amount of struggle that's going on pretty much everywhere in the world. While the political class and the economic magistrates who are controlling the society seem to be doing quite well for themselves, the vast majority of people in the world are really having a very hard time. You have really low wages in Asia. People are struggling to find places to live. Oftentimes people are living in conditions of what equates to modern slavery. In the United States, you have people with lack of access to education, struggling to find health care for themselves or for their children or for their families. In South America, you have lack of products coming to places, just basic essential products because of political and economic unrest. And throughout the world, there's all these kinds of economic problems and social problems that are happening on a local level and impacting lives very deeply. But the mass media and the matrix itself is continuing to suck us into a certain narrative of looking at the world. And this narrative, in a lot of ways, revolves around the money system, around the power politics, and around the overall theme of the imperialism of money. It doesn't really discuss positive, progressive changes of any kind. It's just this narrative of strife, of struggle, and of oppression. The mass media, the internet media, the hyper news is the mind control because it provides us a false picture of reality. It isolates us from ourselves, it isolates us from each other, and it isolates us from gaining an understanding of each other's problems and proposing constructive, progressive, proactive solutions to those problems that we face as a community. So everything in our society is monetized, and there's this whole over monetization of things where monetary systems are interconnected and everything is just this web of money that's kind of flowing around digitally. And you start to see this, for example, in some places in Europe where you have this is happening at a very advanced stage. For example, Denmark, there's a lot of the Scandinavian countries, and largely cashless societies. Everything is paid for by card. Everything goes through an internet bank. So everything that you do is kind of digital. And you're always kind of doing this digital accounting through this system. And this system has an incredible amount of power over what we do and how we live our lives. And it can be very difficult to find your way through this system of money. So going back to this whole idea of disconnectedness from nature and how we are almost systematically disconnected from nature by money. And linking back to the climate idea, you can see why this system that we're always feeding is always pushing us further into the domains where we would experience abrupt climate change. I mean, if we had a rational society, then we would be doing something about this 50 years ago with the foresight of the changes. But instead, what you see today is just almost an overburdening of the planet, an exhaustion of the planet, an exhaustion of its resources to just really pull everything down and just ramp up the industry, to ramp up the war machines, to ramp up the system. And it's this kind of feels like when you're in nature, in comparison, like it's this death grip on nature, that society has this death grip on the planet and its ability to grow and thrive. And it's because of the monetary system largely and the type of society that a monetary system facilitates. In order to deal with the climate change problem, we must make profound social changes to the way our societies operate. The only way that I can maybe suggest how to do this is to simply ask questions. When you're interacting with the money system and when you're interacting with people, we have to awaken this consciousness. We have to be comfortable in asking why things are for what they are. You have to question the system. you have a right to question the system, especially in matters of your personal affairs. And I think this questioning is a very important process in order to free oneself from the system, or at least gain some perspective on it and really understand how this system can lead to something like abrupt climate change, where you have severe climatological disturbances in the jet stream, in the sea ice, large temperature anomalies all over the planet, large ocean temperature anomalies. The Gulf Stream is 5 to 7 degrees warmer than average. You have interestingly, a very strong El Nino-like feature developing in the Pacific Basin. And this is a completely kind of new phenomenon. It's a new El Nino. It's like the ocean is just warmer. There's more heat in the ocean. So you have this stronger, more persistent El Nino effect, which changes the climate system in the Western Hemisphere, but also the world at large. And yet we perpetuate in the business activities. We perpetuate in the same ways, and we augment, and we seek to augment the old ways. So I think it's important to think about some of these things moving forward. There's a lot of changes that are coming down the pike here in terms of social systems also. I mean, with regards to what's happening in the United States with Trump and the whole issue in Syria now, which is Trump has effectively just gone to war with Syria with the help of Mad Dog. Remember, we talked about Mad Dog before in an earlier broadcast. And also Kushner. You know, I remember bringing up Kushner a long time ago about how he swiped $2.1 billion off the AIG debt deal. I think it was back in 2008 or something like this. Real high-profile, wealthy capitalist family money kind of person, which is now apparently in the government. Apparently Trump's son-in-law is now his chief advisor. So the political situation in the United States has become a family business. The United States is now a family business. It's a family-operated affair. And you can see this symbolically by Trump not residing in the White House. Trump is residing in Mar-a-Lago, which is where he does business. And this is the kind of removal of the center of power from an established concept of government to something totally new. A billionaire sitting in a mansion in Mar-a-Lago, the new capital of the United States. And it's this usurping of power that really defines the Trump regime and its fascist approach to things. I mean, especially with this recent retaliation in Syria with Mad Dog, where you see this draconian, brutal approach without a real knowledge of the situation of what's going on in Syria. It's very complex there. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's a tragedy. It's been an ongoing tragedy now for years, and there's a lot of bad history behind this tragedy. And so it's a very complex situation there. And for Trump to just go in there with Mad Dog and just land a bunch of Tomahawk missiles in the middle of Syria with very little warning, just doing it almost ad hoc. It's a very dangerous sign. And we need to look out for this in the future, folks. I think that this is a really defining event in our political situation because it just ramps up this concept of war along with the parasitizing, metastasizing cancer of the money system, which is just depleting the resources of all the planet and strangling the biosphere. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion on some of the social and political and psychological effects of climate change and why it's important to think about it. So I'll be doing a few more shows here in the upcoming weeks. I'm thinking about doing some more tutorials on Earth Null School. I think those are really good. I think people seem to like them, so I'm going to keep going with that. I'll also be trying to keep up with what's going on in the sea ice, do maybe a special on the Kara Sea, for example. It's kind of a small subsea of the Arctic Sea, which is the most threatened parts of the Arctic Ocean right now, and maybe get into some of the more exotic gases discussion, talking about methane and the methane issue and the melting of the permafrost as well. These are all really important issues, and I think I'm going to like to bring those up. And perhaps after that, I'm going to be doing maybe a few shows on geoengineering and what's going on with geoengineering. You hear a lot about geoengineering in the news. You have geoengineeringwatch.org putting together a lot of data over the years on geoengineering, and it seems to be coming into the mainstream, and a lot of people have questions about it. And I don't know so much, but I maybe know a bit, and I can maybe talk a little bit about how that stuff works and what they're talking about. So if you're interested in these things, please like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much for listening.